Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the first of our live YouTubes. Hopefully we're going to give you some useful information tonight on the things you need to do when you're setting up your bow. It doesn't matter if it's a new bow, an old bow, second-hand, brand new from the shop, if you've done this before. We're just going to go through some of the basic things, the things you need to measure, things you need to be aware of when you're doing that. So I'll be referring to a couple of documents tonight. The first one is the Eastern Arrow Tuning Guide, which we'll post a link to in the comments section. And that's, as it says, it's produced by Eastern, and it tells you how to tune your arrows, your bow and your arrows. It even goes into how to select them, how to put the nocks in, the points in, all that type of stuff. It's a really in-depth guide. The vast majority of it you won't need, because it goes into really in-depth fine-tuning, but certainly the first few bits on how to do it. It's got how to set up your bow, how to do a basic tune. It's got some great diagrams for if your arrow does this, do this, and things like that. It's a brilliant document, so I'll be referring to that. But like I say, it's quite a big weighty tome and you might feel a little bit overwhelmed. So the other document I refer to is the Bow International recent guide on bow tuning. It's available through their website, but we'll also put a link on for that. That's quite a good basic way of going through things in an easily digestible form. There's a couple of bits there that I think are important that aren't covered in there, which is why we've referenced the Eastern Guide. And also the other thing that you'll need is your bow manual, so the manual that came with your bow. If you haven't got one with it because it came secondhand or you just don't know where it's gone, have a look on the manufacturer's website. They should have them. If they don't, drop in an email or even ask around your club or on this forum. We might be able to find one for you. Okay, so what are you going to need tonight, or when you come to do this? Obviously, you're going to need your bow. You're going to need a bracing height gauge. So bracing height gauge is essentially an archer's ruler. They come in different types. One side's imperial in inches. I'll be talking mainly in inches tonight, not because I'm old enough to use inches, but because I use an American bow, so everything's in inches. But on the other side, if you're that way inclined, there are centimetres, millimetres. And this is marked up so that you can measure various points on your bow to make sure it's consistent and where your knocking point goes. Things to watch: make sure it's straight, you've not stood on it, bent it, sat on it, done whatever, and that these little clips at the top that go onto the string, that they're nice and tight. Okay, try and use the same one all the time, because they are calibrated slightly differently depending on the make, depending where they're measured for. So bracing height gauge. When we're talking about knocking points and putting a tuning knocking point on, I use good old electrical insulation tape. This is just the normal width. I cut it in the middle so that it's lighter, it's thinner on the string, and that's really good because you can put it on your bow and you can move it up and down the string, and then it's really easy to take off. The Eastern Guide says use one of those brass knocking point things. They're a nightmare to get off. Rip your fingers up, and that they're not ideal unless it's a club bow. So yeah, I use insulating tape. Some people use different things, but that's what I use. I'll be talking about lining your bow up. So I use biter bow limb gauges. You don't need these. There are other companies that make them. I've had these for years. They're really nice and durable, and they're designed to sit on the limbs. I'll show you how to fit those on. You can do the same thing by getting your limbs, measuring them, and then either with a bit of insulating tape or really thin washi tape. For the crafters out there, you can stick that on a line, or even just get a marker pen and draw a straight line about 1 inch, 2 inches down the centre of your limb, just before where it sits into the riser. But it'll become apparent why we need that. We'll talk about buttons a little bit. So this is a Shibuya DX button. This one is probably about 20 years old. They last for ages. I've got the gold tip on it that it came with. That's purely because it looks quite nice. The button I've got in my bow at the moment is a biter button. But to be honest, I use my Shibuya and my biter interchangeably. They're both really good quality. Your button comes with some Allen keys to alter it, which I'll show you how to do, and different weights of spring, which make this plunger go in and out, and it'll come with some spare heads. So yeah, you'll need your button, and then you'll also need an arrow, okay, that's set up how you normally shoot it. Okay, so first measurement. So, oh, in fact, actually, why do we tune? So we tune and we set our bow up so that we make the bow operate as efficiently as possible, so that then it can make the arrow go along its arch trajectory as cleanly as possible. So that just means there's less interference. The arrow's going as fast as it possibly can for its speed and for the poundage, and it hopefully just makes things more easy to repeat. It's not going to catch on things. It's not going to do anything like that. So it's all about accuracy and efficiency to get the most out of your bow and the arrow when you're shooting. So what we're going to look at quickly here, just got my list. So I've got the I've printed out the bow guide because it's quite a good indicator. Okay, for those of you quite new to archery, it may look when you're shooting that your arrow goes straight. It doesn't. It goes on a curve, on a parabola, and as it's going over that, regardless of what distance you're shooting, the arrow's also flexing like that along that curve and porpoising up and down like that. So all the things we're going to adjust attempt to make that arrow fly as straight as it can along that curve, and that's effectively what tuning does. You're trying to take that flex out, trying to take that movement out, and you're trying to make that trajectory as flat as possible, making the bow as efficient as possible. Doesn't matter on the weight, poundage of your bow to tune. It's all about you. You just need a consistent draw length and a consistent style. If you're shooting groups the size of the boss, possibly wait a little bit longer before you start really thinking about tuning. But certainly your bow setup is something you need to do. So first things first, get your bow, put the string on, put all your bits and pieces on. And the first measurement you're going to do is you're going to measure your bracing height. So you take the bracing height guide that I mentioned, you clip it onto your bowstring like this, and then you just rest it on the arrow rest. And then what I do, I've made a mark where I've decided my bracing height will be. So I shoot a bracing height of just over 8.5 inches. I determine my start and my finish point from my owner's manual. There's a little table in there saying what bow length you shoot and what you should be looking for a bracing height. So if the bracing height is too high, you're not going to get the most efficiency from your limbs, and you're probably going to whack your arm quite a lot as the bowstring goes past. But if you if it's too low, what will happen is the string effectively slaps against the limbs as you let go, which is why you might have a noisy bow. So what I tend to do is I stick it in the middle of the manufacturer's guidance by increasing or decreasing the number of twists, and then I see how it goes sound-wise. You'll find there's a sweet spot, and that just takes a little bit of time and fiddling, but don't worry too much about it. If you stick it in the middle of the manufacturer's guidelines, that's absolutely fine. When you've decided, yeah, I like how my bow sounds, it's shooting well, that's when I mark everything. So I'll also, using my tape, then put on a sort of a temporary knocking point. So I'll take this tape, I'll cut it down the middle, and then I'll stick one on above and below, about 1/4 inch about above square, above the horizontal line, and that's a good starting point for your bow. So if string length is another important thing. You need to make sure you've got the right length string for your bow, because if it's too short, you're going to have a really high bracing height, and if it's too long, you're going to have lots and lots of twists in it to try and get it to the bracing height you need it. So again, in your book, it will tell you the optimal string length. As you get more experienced, you may decide to change it. I shoot a string ever so slightly longer than what's recommended in my book, and I just stick a few more twists in. I believe that makes it more forgiving. Something I've always done. It might not be true, but that's what I think, and it's worked for me. I normally make my own bowstrings, but I've recently been using podium bowstrings, which are fantastic. I cannot fault them. They're the only bowstrings I've put on my bows since I was 15. I've been making my own strings since then, and Sonny's quality is fantastic. So if you're not sure, give him a shout and he'll be able to give you some advice on what length bowstring you need. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is tiller. Now this gets people quite nervous and quite concerned, and it sounds very technical. Tiller is another measurement, and it's the measurement, you take the measurement from the top of the limb here to the string, and then the bottom limb to the string, and then you have a difference, and it should be positive, so there should be a bigger gap at the top than there is at the bottom, but we're talking a few mil. We're not talking very much. And the reason you have a tiller is because when you're drawing, your fingers aren't in the center of the string, or the center of the bow, its overall length. So when that happens, that means that if the tiller's not set correctly, it's gonna slap it. You're trying to get the string to hit the limbs at exactly the same time, each arrow, and that's why you adjust your tiller. Hoyt have introduced all these new things on their XI bows. I've not shot one of those yet. They've had good reports, but don't worry about that. That's more a personal preference. What we're talking about here is tiller and the basic setup of your bow. So I'll show you how I measure it if I don't take the camera out. Okay, so what I do first off, now you'll see some people measuring tiller like this. I'm always concerned about that, because I'm like, oh, have I measured it from the same point? So what I tend to do now, and I've only started doing this in the last year or so, is I'll put my bracing height gauge onto the string, making sure the gauge is against the string, so it's square, and then all I do is I look at where the limb joins the pocket, limb goes into the pocket, so that's on there, that's 17.2 centimetres. So you can see, if I lower that down, where I'm measuring to, 17.2. Okay, then take it off, and I do the same on the bottom. And I'm coming out at about 17 there. So I've actually got a tiller of positive of 2. My bow's shooting really nicely at the moment. I probably ideally have it a little bit bigger, but like I say, it's shooting nicely at the moment. I'm not too concerned. Now adjusting the tiller, so it's all to do with like the angle the limb sits in here. You've got to be quite careful, and again refer to your manual, because there's lots of different bolts down there, and if you alter the tiller, you change the poundage of the bow. So it's an equal and opposites type of thing, and so if you take one twist off to change it, you need to put one twist on down the bottom of the bolts, but your bow manual will tell you how to do that. So we've done bracing height. where to put your knocking point, what your tiller is, and again, there'll be manufacturer's guidelines. Set it in the middle, see how you get on. But generally speaking, you should always have a bigger gap at the top than you do have at the bottom. So the next thing that you need to set up is you need to check your string alignment or your limb alignment, and that's where I was talking about these limb gauges or drawing a line on your limbs. So what you do with these is you take them and they're sort of like stepped. So you put them on your limbs, one at the top and one at the bottom, and they've got guidelines there. So when you look at your bow, you're trying to get the string between those black lines, or if you've drawn a line on your limbs, you're trying to get the string to line up with the limbs. Now, what's interesting is limbs were a lot wider when WISard first made these, and mine are quite an old set, so I've just ended up moving them further up the limb than I normally would. So what I do then is I balance my bow on my, I don't know if you can see that, on my long rod. I then stand behind it, and what I'm doing is I'm looking to see if the string cuts through both those lines, those guide markers. Some people put it on a chair. I'm not tall enough to see down, so I use my stand, and then you can get those stands where you just put your bow in. You can use one of those, but the idea is you have it at that sort of angle, you stand behind it, one leg either side of the string, and look down, and then you're trying to make it so that the string sits between those two marks, to cutting your bow in half. If it doesn't, that could be for a number of reasons, particularly if you've bought your bow second hand. It could be that someone's moved, they put like little shims, little washers on the dowels in here, so it could be that, and that moves the limb, so it could be that someone's messed about with that at some point because they've had a set of limbs that are twisted or something like that. So have a look at that. Again, in your owner's manual, it will tell you how to take it all apart. It's really important to make sure everything's done up really tightly at the ends. And then, so the other thing, you could have a twisted riser, which means you're scuppered. How big the twist is, I'm very lucky, my riser's straight, my limbs are straight, it all lines up perfectly. Limbs, you can probably get away with a ever so slightly bent riser, wouldn't really want to. Limbs are more tricky, okay, and sometimes it might not look completely straight just because the way the limb sits in the pocket. If they're new limbs, take them back to the person you bought them from. If they're second hand, make sure you check all this before you buy it. So yeah, so you're going to do that. So the next thing you're going to do before you start tuning, which we'll cover in the next video, is you're going to take your arrow, you're going to leave your limb gauges on, and then you're just going to put your arrow on the string and on the rest. And then what you're going to do is you're going to look like you did before down the thing. So line up your string through your points, and then you're going to look down the arrow, and so you're going to look down the arrow, and when you see it, the arrow should not be completely hidden by the string. You should be able to see the point. Now I'm left-handed, so I can see the point of mine sticking out slightly to the right. Like I can see the whole point, but no air in between the point and the string. If you're right-handed, it'll be sticking out to the left. And again, there's some really good diagrams in the Eastern Guide on how to do this. And you alter that by using your button, and you use the little Allen key in that collar, in that hole in the collar, and then you move this in and out. Now on a Shibuya, you'll need to lock it before, because it will come undone. But if you're using a biter one, you don't. I lock mine all up when it's tight, but yeah, so you just move that and you just keep moving it until that you can see the tip of the arrow to the left of the string if you're right-handed, to the right if you're left-handed. And then you make sure you've got your medium weight spring in your button, and that this one affects the pressure of the spring. So again, you have that set about midway, so that's your start point. You've got your tiller set, positive tiller in the manufacturer's guidelines. You've got your bracing height set in the middle of the manufacturer's guidelines. Your temporary knocking point on at about 1/4 inch above square. Then you've got your string, which is also within manufacturer's guidelines. And then you've got your button set to so it's about middle pressure, middle spring, middle pressure on this end bit, and the point is to the left if you're right-handed, to the right if you're left-handed. This is all in the Eastern book, so don't worry about remembering it. And then you're set up and you're ready to tune. Any questions, anything you want to know, just let us know and we'll answer them in the next session. See you all later. Bye bye.